Welcome back to part two, the neurologist. At this time, I still have no feeling from my neck down and am struggling in day to day life. Something that a lot of people don't realize, and you maybe you don't either, or whatever, I don't know where you're at, is that MS is invisible to everyone else. So it's a very lonely disease. Not only does the person who has MS have really no way to understand it in a really articulate way, but it's almost impossible to explain it to somebody else. And certainly from the onlooker, none of us look unhealthy. If we were in a wheelchair, that's obvious, or someone who can't walk, or someone who has, I don't know, some sort of visible illness, it's very easy to sort of address that person and or give them the empathy that they deserve. But most people with MS, you would never know. Yet they fight a war on the inside that is very, very real. So I would go home after my diagnosis in utter shock with really no idea what to do. But the only relief I did get from my diagnosis, and this is by no means any consolation prize, is that finally my illness had a name. My illness wasn't ambiguous, amorphous, mysterious, unsolvable, or, well, I guess it is kind of was unsolvable, but it had a name. And it gave me a target. And it gave me something where I could learn. I didn't know anything about MS, like I'd said before. But there was some sort of relief in knowing that at least I knew what it was. I would go home and continue on with life as best I could. The overwhelming thing of this, and I don't know that I ever really came to grips with it, and I probably still haven't, is that this illness was never going to end. I was diagnosed with relapsing remitting MS at the time, but it was an improper diagnosis. I would only learn in time because I've only ever had one attack and it never ended. So to be more accurate, I had progressive primary MS from day one. So I never had a relapsing remitting sort of MS where you get sick and then you go back to perfectly normal, symptom free, and then you go for a while where you're fine. And then you would get sick again where you have MS symptoms, and back and forth. I never recovered from that first attack. So, interesting side note. So back to the neurologist. And I look back at those days. I have so many people to thank that I couldn't thank enough. And I regret that I was so drowned by my circumstances of life. My divorce is still very active. My illness, obviously, very active still. I still had very little feeling in my body. I didn't know how I was going to figure out anything in life anymore, because nothing in my life was normal in any way anymore. My life was changed forever, irreversibly, and I had no idea what it had changed into or what to do about it. But that didn't stop life from happening. My wife, ex-wife, kept coming at me with one thing after the other. She knew that I was ill, but would not relent. life kept coming. Bills kept coming. Figuring out how to be a father now, figuring out how to, again, pay my bills, and the overwhelming, drowning stress. And then all the symptoms of MS. I had, again, little feeling in my body, but then fatigue. Fatigue at this time is so... It is impossible to explain what the fatigue is like. Everybody's been tired. I've been tired before I was diagnosed too. But fatigue with MS is like being... It's like being drunk. It's like you've been on an all-night bender. You've drank every drink in the bar, and you're so drunk that you can barely walk out of the bar. But this time, you're drunk on tired. There was times when I would fall asleep on the couch, and I knew that I needed to go to bed, but I was too tired to get off the couch and walk to my bed. And I would wake up a little way, sometimes in the middle of the night with the sorest back because I was sleeping in some crazy position for I don't know how long. And then I would just sort of get some rest, and I would make my way to the bedroom, go to bed. Anyway, back to the neurologist. If you don't drink coffee, you really should. I really recommend it. By the way, in all the things that I ever did, I was really happy to find out that all the diets I ever did, coffee was never excluded. That was one of God's mercies. Anyway, back to the neurologist. So I would go home and wait for this call from the MS clinic to see my neurologist, or see a neurologist. Still in the back of my mind, I was told that this was incurable, that this wasn't something that was going to fix itself or whatever. Incurable, whatever that means. I still thought that the neurologist could help. I still thought, somewhere in the back of my mind, I think this is where I know that I never lost my sense that I could beat this. I've overcome many, 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 many large mountains in my life, and I thought that I could beat this too. Even though everything said I can't, from the professionals to the internet to whatever, incurable, unfixable, life sentence, MS. It's like a tattoo on your face that you didn't want, but there it is. And what are you going to do about it? Anyway, I would go home at this time too, because I'm in such a place of shock and trauma. And people who are, if only people that have you been in extreme trauma, do you understand this, is that you lose the scope of time. There's no day, there's no night, there's no days of the week, there's no months anymore. It is just a stretch of now. You are so overwhelmed by your circumstance that the rest of the world kind of becomes like a dull noise. And you're stuck in a place alone with your situation that is seemingly unmitigatable, unovercomable, but I don't know, it's like being chained to a demon. It's like being chained to a demon, and that demon hates you. And that chain can't be broken. And it's your problem. And nobody else sees it. Nobody else sees the demon. but you feel it, you know it, you live it, and it's not going away. Anyway, I digress. Back to the neurologist. I don't know how long it was between when I left the hospital and got my diagnosis to telling my mom and my girlfriend at the time to when I got the call and, for the appointment at the neurologist. And I don't know, it felt like 100 years. Of course it wasn't. It could have been days, it could have been weeks. I couldn't be sure. But finally I would get the appointment, and we would go in, my girlfriend and my mom at the time, who, God bless her, I could do a video series just on the greatness of my mother. I really could. And we'll get to more of her story later. And my girlfriend at the time too, honestly, they were both so gracious to me and kind to me, supportive of me. And I felt terrible that I couldn't give them back adequately what they were giving to me, just in love and affection and support. So yeah. Anyway, my girlfriend and my mom and me would go to my neurologist appointment. Neurologist was a kind enough man. He wasn't mean. He wasn't whatever. He's fine. He would give me the rundown of the kind of Cole's notes of what MS is, and that I had what he considered to be relapsing remitting, and that I would go in and out of bouts, or he would explain to me. And then I couldn't help but feel it was just so patronizing, to be honest, that he's sitting there perfectly healthy, and this isn't his fault. But I felt it was so patronizing that he would sort of look at me with these doughy eyes saying, the experts out there, they're really working tirelessly on a cure, and with any luck, maybe in the 3 to 5 years that they'll come up with some sort of cure for MS. And they are working on it, and there's foundations that are working on it, whatever. And I looked at him, and I looked at it, I looked at him, because he's a doctor, I assume that he's extremely wealthy. He might not be. Healthy. He looked like he was in great shape. Young guy. Good haircut. And with absolutely nothing invested in this. He had no skin in the game. He was great. MS is his gift. It's his career. It makes him money every day, and probably a lot of it. And here I am. My life is falling apart, falling out of the sky, like a World War II fighter plane with this guy who's just got his wing shot off, and he's trying to control this spiral and this fire and the smoke, and he's spinning out of control, wondering when he's going to hit the ground, or if. And he's trying to, and I'm like the pilot's at the stick, trying to control and looking at the dials and trying to just sort of figure it out, as that all the dials on the dash are spinning out of control, and I'm running, trying to keep the stick, trying to control this crazy thing. And I'm looking at this guy with these, I'm really sorry that you're going through this. I'm like, the hell you are. The hell you are. What do you care? What do you care, really? You're going to go home tonight, and you're going to have all your bills paid, and you're going to drive your nice car, and whatever else. I mean, this is just how I felt. Honestly, I don't know the man. Maybe he's drowning in debt. Maybe he's got student loans that he's, maybe he, whatever, I don't know. But just, it was difficult for me to be emotionally available. Anyway, he gave me the colloquial answers to MS and explained things as in a very clinical, sterile sort of way. Told me that the smart guys out there are working on a cure and they're doing their best. And then he gave me 2 pieces of paper that were back to back with a list of medications. And he suggested that I go in the other room and look it over. And I didn't know anything about MS still. In fact, I was hoping that my neurologist, I already knew there was no cure, but I still hoped that some sort of goodness would come out of this, like some sort of something. I don't know. I was hoping. So we went into the other room, me and my girlfriend and my mom. We looked over the list, and they don't know anything about MS either, and none of us knew anybody who with MS, except now me. I'm the first person I ever knew with MS. That just occurred to me. So we looked over the list. All of them had possible outcomes. All of them had the rate of success over 20 years. That was something that was sort of stood out for me then, is that in 20 years, this is what the odds of success were after 20 years. And I was diagnosed quite late in life. I was 49 when I got diagnosed. And I have no MS in my family at all. I didn't know which one to pick. And I didn't want to go on drugs. I didn't want to have MS, obviously. So I just picked the one with the best odds. I didn't know, and there's something to have different side effects, and I was in no place to pick one. My neurologist offered me no real advice on medication, so I picked the one with the best odds. And so I would pick one, and if anybody wants to know what that is, they can send me a comment, but I picked the one that had a 50-50 chance of preventing further progression of MS after 20 years. That was the one I chose in the end. And so, okay, well, how about this one? So I picked that one, checked the box, handed the sheet back to the nurse. And the appointment was over. I remember when I would sit in my thinking time, sort of like after the neurologist's appointment, I thought, well, whatever he had to offer, he was very clear of what he had to offer and what he did not. So in a way, it was good. There was no sugarcoating this. There was no false hope. There was no lack of information that he offered. The information was all accurate as far as he had it. No cure. No real idea of what the future was. He did say likely that your illness will eventually progress. You will end up in a wheelchair and you will eventually die from your illness. Yeah, that's it. Take the drugs, and with any luck, and he didn't say luck, but after 20 years or whatever, perhaps you'll live a life. I don't know. I forget even what he said, to be honest. But he didn't give much hope. Basically, no cure, take drugs, go home. So I thought to myself, well, all right. All the mystery work is out of that. I remember that night going home and my mom and my girlfriend were there. And all I can remember is how tired I was and how overwhelmed I was and how hopeless I felt. And after all the hell that I went through with my ex and my marriage and holding on to trying to make things work and so many challenges of life, to now have an incurable disease and my life is over. My life was over. I was just waiting now to die. That's all there was. I remember me and my girlfriend went and watched a movie, and she was behind me holding me in her arms, and I would just eventually just fall asleep. And sleep was my only sanctuary. When I was still, or when I was sleeping, was the only time I didn't feel sick. Yeah. And then the next months and years to come, I would sleep a lot. Anyway, that night, I would fall asleep in my girlfriend's arms. We were watching a movie. I don't even remember what the movie was. I don't think it probably made it past the credits, and I was gone. To recap this part of the series of visiting my neurologist, is that he didn't have much to offer other than a little bit of an understanding of the illness and medication. And he also didn't offer anything in the way of any way to help myself. To his credit, he did recommend I start taking vitamin D, and he recommended 4,000 units a day. But that was it. Again, I'm not here to slam on the medical system. I'm not here to whatever, but that's just what it was. I'm not here to say it was they're good, they're evil, or nothing. But they had nothing to offer me other than medication. And I also felt an overwhelming sense of an ill sort of motivation to do anything more about it than offer medication. Years to come after, I say years, I guess there is years, but the time to come after, and as I would learn a great many things. But that's going to have to come in the videos to come. The next video that's next, that's why it's called the next video, is about, it's called So Now What? And it's the start of what I did after this appointment, and what would really start my journey back from where I started to where I am now, with many detours. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you're getting some out of this. Like and subscribe. That's what I'm supposed to say. I want to help you. That's why I'm doing this. I want you to get better too. I really do. As I say in all my videos, I love you. I want the best for you. And I want you to win too. So, I'll catch you in the next one, okay? Keep fighting. Don't give up. Keep going. Follow the breadcrumbs. Life leaves clues. Anyway. I am not stopping talking. Okay. I love you. Okay. See you in the next one. The next one is called So Now What? Part 3. My dog's walking around here. Tap dancer. Anyway. See you in part